From the center of the universe, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, this is the SDM Show with your host, Rob Cairns. The SDM Show focuses on business, life, productivity, digital marketing, WordPress, and more. Sit back, relax, grab your favorite drink, and enjoy the show. Here is Rob.
Hey everybody, I'm Rob Cairns. I'm the founder, CEO, and chief creator of Amazing Ideas and Stunning Digital Marketing. In today's podcast, I have my good friend Bud Kraus with me, and we are going to talk about making content for others. And then Bud goes down the rabbit hole with his new announcement. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. This podcast is sponsored by Stunning Digital Marketing, the agency that can help protect your WordPress website today. Go to stunningdigitalmarketing.com and see what we can do to help you protect your business investment. That's stunningdigitalmarketing.com. Hey everybody, Rob Cairns here. And in today's podcast, I have my good friend, Mr. Bud Kraus with me. Hey Bud, how are you today?
Okay, Rob, how are you?
Doing good considering the events of the week, as you know. I can go ahead and spoil because I was recording with Mr. Jeff Chandler the other day and he promised me no baseball talk, where that discussion went very quickly. So, it's all good. So anyway, you are somebody I consider an amazing teacher and an amazing content producer. And today I thought we would wanted to talk about building content for others. So what does that kind of look like for you?
It's really funny. I'm sort of, to give you a bigger context, I'm sort of thinking of doing a talk on this whole subject, sort of like, I'm sick of designing websites, or I'm burnt out designing websites. Now what should I do? What's my next move?
Yeah.
And it's not that I designed so many websites, but I really did get tired of the whole client, all that stuff. In fact, I see a lot of people in the WordPress community in my boat kind of thing. I don't want to do this anymore. It's maybe they just lost interest or aptitude. They're just tired of it.
But it's a number of other things. It's scope creep, clients who want to, what clients want with new websites, and it's kind of my experience is they want the Ferrari model for paying for the Pinto. And, it's funny when you say that. I kind of attribute designing websites to you walk into a restaurant and you say, I want a beer. I want a salad to start. I want a main course. I want dessert. Websites are no different. I want this, I want this, I want this. And by the way, let's toss in, and that's part of the problem. But part of the other problem is I don't think clients value what websites are worth. And that's a big issue in itself, right?
I think it's all true. And I got tired of it and the aggravate. In fact, I sort of look at building new websites, especially new ones, as soul scarring events, and I don't want to do it. So what happened while that was going on, another thing was going on, which was, I started to know more people in the WordPress community, and I was finding myself like networking inside the WordPress community, although I don't think of it that way because they're just friends. And I said, geez, what could I do with all that? I mean, I didn't really think of it quite that way, but the bottom line was I started realizing, I love writing, and I've written for others for free, and I didn't want to do that forever. No. And one thing led to the next and the next, and sort of like the breakthrough, if you will, or the idea that, hey, I could create content for others and get paid for it, was when Vikas from InstaWP we got in touch with each other, and he basically said, why don't you create a video for me? And I thought, oh, that's a really good idea. And so I did. And from that, one little idea had sparked, hey, I could write for GoDaddy. I could create content. I could create a course for OS training. I could do this for other people. So now I really am just focused on creating WordPress content for WordPress businesses. And I just love it because I can work with my friends and work in a space that I love and explore new things. So, for example, I'll get hired to create a post on the WordPress Playground. Well, I didn't know that much about it to start with, so I had to do the research. Or I did a post for, creating using ChatGPT to spin up a WordPress plugin. So things that are sort of like on the edge of what I know, I have to push through and then learn about it. So it's really, I just love it, and it is a way of teaching. It's very much a way of teaching. So, I just look at myself as just, that's all I really want to do now is just focus on creating content for WordPress businesses.
And I think the reason a lot of businesses are looking for help is it's a time factor. Like, people don't understand that creating content takes time. Like,
it does.
You take this podcast, for example, and it's funny. People look at me and they say, oh, it's a 30-minute to 45-minute recording, you're done. And I say, not so quick. There's merging files together. There's doing uploads. I don't do hard edits on my transcripts. So a lot of people do. That adds time. And I'm still into, like, when I do a podcast, I'm 3 to 4 hours for every episode I do, regardless of how I do it. Content is a time process.
Yeah. And even it all takes time. And there's a lot of, like, in my case, there's a lot of research and learning sometimes that has to take place before I can write something that is good. And I really find that the more I write, now I've written all my life, really, so writing is not new, but the more you write, the better you get at it. And there's a certain kind of a WordPressy way of talking in articles, which I sort of do, but everybody who reads my articles usually they say, oh, you write just the way you talk. And I go, how else am I supposed to do this? I don't write any other way. I just write the way I talk. Yeah. And I love, I think it's a real creative process. And I love, you write something and then you come back in a day or two and you go, oh, that's, I could use a better word here, a better phrase. Mm-hmm. And it's a really cool process. I mean, I really do. I like it a lot, and same thing with producing videos. It takes a lot of the work is all done before you actually produce the video. For example, there might be research, there certainly will be design work, there will be what I call rehearsal. So because I don't read scripts, before I record a video, I will, go over this a bunch of times before I hit the record button, so I know exactly where I'm going. Because everything's a story. There's a beginning, a middle, and end to everything. And whether I write something or I create a video, it's always that format: beginning, middle, and end. And it works, and I really, enjoy it, and I hope to keep doing it. That's
the interesting thing. Yeah. Wouldn't you say in today's market, video is probably long and short form the most compelling content you can put out there?
Long and short?
Yeah.
What do you mean by long? You mean the length of the video?
Yeah. So short form video is basically a minute or less as a teaser, where long form is.
Yeah, but I don't unfortunately, because of me, I generally don't do short videos, even though I try, because I'm thorough. Okay, so it takes me time to go over things, but people seem to like that. And I speak a little slower, so people seem to like that too. Although I can talk fast, I'm trying to convey information. So what is the sense of speaking fast? Mm-hmm. So I generally go a little bit slower, but it's more in detail. So if I do, let's say I'm working on, for instance, WP Now, a video, what's new in WordPress 6.4? Mm-hmm. And the answer is not much, but that's another story. But let's say what's new in 6.4, I will do a whole outline of everything that's going to go into that video before I even do anything. And then I will just, what's going to be in a PowerPoint presentation and what are the things that I'm going to demonstrate. So I really do a lot of preparation before you ever see anything. And instead of being 3 minutes long, which is like, you think like, okay, can you do this in 3 minutes? No, I can't. It'll probably be this one will probably be 10 to 15 minutes long. Whereas I did What's New in 6.3, it took a lot long, it took 20 minutes. I didn't want it to be, but it turned out to be that way. And the feedback I got was pretty good. So, and the views and all that turned out to be, hey, this was good. So, that's, to me, that's really the most important thing. Is it good? Do people like it? I can entertain myself all I want. I'm not the market. I'm not the audience. It's the people out there. In a way, I am the audience, but, it has to be good for people who want to learn something.
Yeah, we have to. I want to stop you there for a sec. You just made a compelling statement. You said you're not the market. I have to think of the audience. And too many times in creative spaces, what designers do, I don't care if it's content, if it's a website, if it's social media, they're thinking about what they want, not what their audience wants. And I think they need to dial it back and say, how do I appease my audience? What do they want? Because what I want doesn't really matter at the end of the day.
You're absolutely right. And I think one of the hard things too is really, who is the audience? I mean, if I do something for GoDaddy, I want to know who are the people that are likely to read this? What kind of business people? What kind of, we tend to think, at least I do, and this is wrong, that only WordPress people are going to read this stuff. No, especially if it's on GoDaddy, it's going to be big. I mean, it's going to be small, do-it-yourselfers. It's going to be small businesses. It's going to be writers. It's a broad, if you do something, so you always have to look at, well, who is the audience for this? And that could be harder than you think, because I'm not an employee of GoDaddy. I'm not an employee of InstaWP. I'm not an employee of OS Training. So I have to get feedback from them as to who am I writing for? And I usually ask, as I get into things, like, who is this for?
Are you producing your videos on a Mac or a PC these days? I should know the answer.
No. I always use a Mac. I use Camtasia for the videos.
Okay.
I like it. I've been using it a long time. I'm finally getting the hang of it. Every time you use it, you learn new things. And of course, they change the software and they make it better. And they do all kinds of things now that, I don't. It's like everything else. I learn as I go. So.
I think the lesson there is the best way to learn something is to have a project that you have to get done. Not just a fictitious, let's try it, and then work your way through it. And the first time it takes you longer, but the reality is you're learning as you go, which is probably the best.
Right. And that's right. And I always try to learn something that I know I will use again. Because why learn to use something if it's like a one-off kind of thing? It's just a waste of time. No. It's so funny you say this because, because the very first website I think I ever did was like in 1994, 95, whatever. It was for New York women in film and television in New York City. And I had, I went in there and I said, oh, I know how to make a website. Give me this, give me that, and I'll go home and I'll make a website for you, And I get home and I say, I don't know how to do this. So I had to learn. And that's, how you start, is sometimes you just have to stretch yourself a little bit. And that's one of the things I like about what I'm doing now, is that's exactly what I have to do, is to just push beyond, if I went to GoDaddy and I said, I wanted to write an article about custom post types. And they basically said to me, we've got all that stuff already. We don't want to know about, we know all that stuff. And everybody, and then it evolved, the conversation evolved to, hey, let's use ChatGPT to create a very simple custom post type. And that was much more interesting, and it worked. And of course I said, oh, I'm gonna have to challenge myself to do this. So I like pushing beyond what I know, even if it's gonna take more time to do that. It's more, why just keep writing about stuff that you and everybody else knows? Why not just push beyond that? That's really the key.
I agree. I agree with you. And you mentioned Chat GPT, so we cannot have a content discussion without the words AI in it.
Right, of course.
And you knew this was coming. So
Yeah, I know where you're going, I think.
how do you think about AI in the whole content production process? Do you find it helpful? Do you find it not helpful? Do you find it's a good starter? Where do you sit?
Well, I think about this a lot, like everybody, and I because of I like to say that it's a good thing I'm not 25 because I don't know where people like me would be, if I was 25. So I have sort of the luxury of my age, but um, and I don't, and I think it was Marcus or somebody said, or he quoted somebody that said, and this is really, it's not that I'm afraid that Chat GPT is going to take my job away. I'm afraid that somebody who knows how to use Chat GPT better than me will
Yeah.
take my job. And that's really where we're at right now. I really think that's.
But is that any different than somebody who knows WordPress better than you, or knows security better than you, or knows content protection better than you?
Maybe, but I think that somebody might know things better than me, but do they write better than me? See, and that's the thing about ChatGPT. I don't think that it writes as well as I do. So right now I look at it as a writing assistant. If I'm stuck on an idea or I need a list of so and so, or you can actually put your content into ChatGPT and see if it spins out something better than what you wrote. Okay. But generally, I think I do a better job. I like that. Like, what I find is like I'm writing something and I know 80% of it as I'm writing it. And I'm saying, yeah, but I don't know what Node.js is. Like, I'm not really sure. Let me just go into ChatGPT and find out a little bit more about Node.js. So it helps me expand my knowledge. And it's a lot faster than Google, obviously, because you ask the question and it really gives you the answer. And then there's all kinds of ways for us to clarify, expand, explain what ChatGPT is spitting out. And oh, by the way, you probably know this, is that now there's a Chrome extension which lets you speak to your browser and it speaks back what ChatGPT is writing. So it really is chat. But now I understand they're going to a whole model now where you won't need that extension and you'll just click on something and you can talk to it and it'll talk back. Which I like the idea because I really do feel that it is a conversation. That's one thing I've learned about, that you really, to get the most out of it, think of it as you're just talking to somebody and say, okay, well, what does that mean? And it'll tell you. Yeah. So,
but it's funny though. Everybody thinks AI and they think Chat GPT.
Right. That's true.
Bit of a problem because, as far as I'm concerned, Photoshop has had AI built into it for the last 15 years. And you don't look at it that way. All these brushes that do things automatically, that's AI. All these background removal tools, that's AI.
Yeah. I mean, we've had AI for quite a while, but it's just been sort of silent. And it wasn't really in the public's consciousness until November of last year. But AI has been around in rudimentary, embryonic forms for 10 or so years. We just, it's been in the background. Now it's not in the background. It's in people's, consciousness. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's okay. So since you're building content and you've got new company and let's call it Acme widgets that take off of the old Bugs Bunny cartoons, right?
Right.
Acme was the widgets that fell on Wile E. Coyote every day just for fun, and we're all okay. And they want to start building content. What would you suggest to them as a new company in their space to build content?
I think what you need is, in the beginning, is explainer content. Okay, explainer videos, explainer content. This is how it works. This is the onboarding. This is, you really, I really think that's the very first thing that you need is what this is, what it works, the who, what, why, how of working with our software, and then you can branch out from there, but at least start with the fundamentals. What is this? How does it work? And what problem does it solve for me as the consumer? Explain that to them. This is why this is going to save you time, going to save you money, going to save you whatever. Okay. Get into that kind of stuff. But there's a whole thing, like, I really have gotten into this idea, like, it's really not my idea, but the whole idea of explainer videos. It's not, I'm not in the business of creating what I would call high-end advertising. Okay, that's not my thing. Because I'm a teacher. I teach you stuff. I'm not. That's my. Yeah. I wanted to say something about AI too in the chat GPT, and I forgot what it was. Well, oh well. That's what happens. So can I go ahead? I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, you keep going.
Yeah, I want to break a little news. Speaking of content, okay. Oh, by the way, before I do that, I want to say that for the work that I do, I'm not looking to build an agency at this time of my life, although I know there are agencies that do this kind of work. I just really need 5, 6, 7 clients to go from where I am and to work deeply with each one. So yeah, I don't want or need or can handle like 50 clients. It would be, as a solopreneur, you can't do that. But to go deep with each one, that's what I want to do. And as I said at the start, I'm trying to think about ways of turning this whole thing into a WordCamp topic and maybe something that I could pitch to WordCamp Europe. I don't know, because there are a lot of people out there that in the WordPress world that are designing and developing, and that's fine, but they're also getting burnt out. So what's your next act? What are you going to do now? And writing, teaching, training is a real natural outgrowth of what they know. How to put that information to use, but in a different way, other than building websites. Okay, now time to break some news, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So our good friend, everybody's good friend, Bob Dunn, I have told him, I don't know how long I've known him, but I have said to him, well, Bob, I will never create a podcast. That's one thing I would never, ever do. And if I ever come to you and say, hey, I want to start a podcast, shoot me now. Shoot me right now. So the other
Should
day
we just shoot it on air?
He didn't shoot me now. So I went to him with this crazy idea. So here's the news. Okay. Now I have not made a go, no go decision. So I'm perfectly off the hook to say, hey, I didn't do it. Okay. But one of the things I thought of doing, or the thing I'm thinking of doing, if I do a podcast, and all your help will be welcome. It would be tentatively titled "A Conversation With," okay, ... I'm not saying that will be the title. There's actually a domain called A Conversation With.life, which I really liked, and that's really what it is. So I would do a one-on-one interview like we're doing now, but not talking about WordPress. WordPress would be sort of just incidental. It would be talking about it would be talking about work-life balance. It'll be talking about your history. We don't know anything about, like, I don't know, like a lot of people in the WordPress community, but I don't know like where they were born, what their childhood was like, where they went to school, what they studied. If they weren't doing what they're doing, what would they be doing? What all their life? Okay, because I've always been interested in people, I guess. I mean, and everybody likes to tell their story, right? And I'm not going to ask the question like, "Well, tell me your WordPress journey." No, that's out. Okay, that is not asked. Or like, what was it like working for so and so? None of that stuff. Or did you enjoy WordCamp Europe? No, none of that's in there. Okay, it's all about the individual, and with the purpose of, well, number one, I sort of look at this as the Steve Jobs approach to this, which is I really don't care. Yeah, I mean, I do care that people would listen to it, but I'm first going to satisfy my interest, which is interviewing people. I sort of like started getting into this thing when I took my train trip around the United States like 5, 6 years ago, where everybody I went to, I talked to like forever. And I got really interested in people's stories, and everybody has a really compelling story. It's just get it out of them. And that's really what I want to do. And the idea would be, of course, to bring this to the WordPress community. So if I wanted to know about Rob or this one or that one, if I wanted to listen to this podcast, I would hear it. And it would be I would do maybe 2 a month, maybe 30 minutes to an hour, that kind of thing. It would not be like we're doing now, audio and video. It'd just be audio, but recorded the way we're recording. And, you know, that's really it. Now, Rob, are you going to shoot me? Shoot me now.
No, no, I'm not, because
please talk me out of this.
I am not going to talk you out of this, because when I started this podcast,
right,
I was stupid enough, and I mean stupid enough, that Rob needed to start 2 podcasts at the same time when he had never done one before.
Right.
So I did. I used to run this show, and then I used to run one called like a quick tip show, and then I said, forget this. I merged the 2 of them into one. Now as of this record, I'm about 362 episodes in the can. So
how many years?
4.5.
That's not that much.
No, but I do like 2 a week, basically, on the average.
So, 2 a week. Well, that's how you get there, right?
Yeah. So, but the point is, when I started the show, I never intended. If you had said to me I was going to do over 300 episodes, I said, you're crazy. I'm just passing time, and that would be the way it goes. The biggest thing is most podcasts never get past 5 episodes. And then of those who continue, most of them don't get past 20. Once you get past 20, it becomes really interesting. And I think one of the compelling things to do, so Bob, and we're talking Bob WP, Bob Dunn for reference, who's an amazing mutual friend. I actually talked to him yesterday morning for an hour. We will both tell you consistency matters more than anything. And we will both tell you being yourself matters more than anything. So I have kind of run my show where I don't take third-party ads, for example.
Right.
The only ad in my show is my own ad for my own business, and that's too bad. Because one of the nice things about taking ads is I don't have to kowtow to any advertisers. I can say whatever I want.
That's true.
And I like that approach, because, as I always tell people, I'm not opinionated, and then they laugh at me. So, you know, because I'm very opinionated at times, and just to do it and have fun doing it. I mean, that's the biggest battle, is just enjoying.
But it also gives you visibility too. It gives you, hey, I just saw your, you know, it gives you, it helps you with your, it does.
For me, it's a marketing tool.
Right.
I have businesses that go scope out my podcast. And one of the most common things that happens is they'll book consulting hours with me and say, geez, you have a lot of knowledge. You have a lot of good guests on. You know what you're talking about.
Right.
I need to talk to you for 5 hours, and I send them an invoice and say, here you go. So it's a marketing tool for us. For Bob, it's not a marketing tool, or Nathan Wrigley, because that's what they do all day, every day.
Right.
The other thing that helps, and I will say this and I'll say this again. So Bob, because it's his business, his turnaround time is very short. So what he'll do is he'll record on a Monday and drop on a Thursday or a following Monday.
Right.
I'll record on today's a Friday, and I won't drop this for 2 weeks.
Right.
Because I like that buffer zone, because I still have a business to run.
Right. That's what I'm kind of thinking too, you know. And I don't want to spend, you know, I said to Bob, well, how many hours do you spend in post-production? And he goes, you don't want to know. I said, well, that's the reason why I don't want to do this, because I know that's where a lot of time is spent.
So you
don't have to.
You and I were talking about this before the show.
Right.
And I do very soft editing. So for me to go in and edit this video, there's got to be something really wrong.
Right.
And there's not today, so I'm lucky.
Not yet.
Not yet. Thank you. And for me to go in, and I've had dogs show up in the middle of videos, I've had cats show up. I do what we call in the business is record the tape.
Right.
So that means I treat it as if we're going live, and we're not going live.
Yeah.
I do very little audio editing. So most of my work is combining files. So like I'll take this podcast and I'll add a header, I'll add a trailer. I'll record an intro for you to introduce you before we do. I'll throw an ad in, et cetera, et cetera. Well, all that little stuff. And I do show notes, which are AI generated.
Right.
And I do very soft edit. The only thing I fix on show notes is participants' names and companies. That's it. Right. Everything else goes the way it goes. And just to do it on the soft side is 3 hours an episode, minimum.
Yeah. Well, let's have another time to talk about this, I guess. Not now, but because I'm starting to get, what resources people use and things like that. I don't want to take up the time now to do that, but
no. But the point is,
unless you want to talk about it, but
no, it's okay. It's figure out what works for you. That's all. There's a billion ways to do this.
And one thing I will do though is for every person I interview, they will have to fill out an interview questionnaire, which gives me some basic information because I don't know a lot about people that I know and sort of get some of the preliminary. So I don't have to ask, like, it'll be like, so Rob, what was it like growing up in Toronto? I'll know stuff already, like things that I know.
The other thing, and then
also get their permission whether or not they want me to share or not share. So they might just want me to have information on background, but I don't want you to talk about this. That kind of thing.
And then we'll move on. A couple of things I generally don't do. One, I've had guests in past ask me to feed them ideas, like feed them the questions ahead of time. I won't do that.
I wouldn't do that.
Like a conversation. The other thing I always do is if I don't know the guest well, I do a pre-call. You and I did one of those.
Right.
And then we just talk.
See, I understand that, and I get that, and that's sort of like what I'm going to do with the questionnaire but I want them to give me. There's certain things that I'll always want to know about them before they come on.
Yep.
And then probably do like a 5-10 minute just warm up kind of thing. Because like you said, when we started, sometimes the best things are said before and after the podcast. Well, I want that stuff in the podcast.
Yeah.
And hopefully I will get people to say things that are meaningful, that are revelatory, that other people will relate to. And like Bob said, he said, well, what's going to happen is people will listen to the stories of people that they know, which makes sense. Yep. And the way I look at it is my job is to expand that circle. So I would listen to, let's say, a podcast about you. Like, maybe I can name 50 people. Maybe I can name 100 people. But how am I going to get beyond? How do I get beyond the people who listen to, about people that they know about? And that's really going to be the key. And if you make it interesting, they'll say, yeah, what makes a podcast good, I think, is because I listen to a bunch of them. And I always say, I can't wait for X to do his podcast because he's so damn good. Now, these are usually sports podcasts, right? Yeah. I can't wait for them to talk about this team or that team. That's when it's really good, is when the subscriber can't wait to get that podcast. Then you got something,
I have podcasts like that I listen to from people that I jump on every day.
Right, exactly, right. And that's what makes it, but I'm not going to, this is going to be sort of like a side hustle to me. At least that's how I'm going into this. I'm still, content creator for WordPress businesses, that's really, and this is just going to be for fun and marketing and whatever, and interesting. Let me ask you a question. Hold on. If you don't mind, I want to ask you, is anybody doing anything like this that you know of?
Not off the top of my head in the WordPress space.
Do you think it's something that would interest people?
Yeah, people like stories. It's the same reason people read autobiographies and biographies.
Yeah. And I'm a biography reader. But so you do think there's a place for this, that people would be interested in this?
Yeah, I think so.
Because
Because the other thing too is it elevates the people you're interviewing, because we all know in business, and I think for small agencies and small freelancers, the personal brand is more important than the freelancer, the agency brand.
And I really think there's a couple of things that I think no brainers. One, I don't think there's any shortage of people that would come on and do this. Okay.
Mhm.
I just don't. Number two, I don't think there's a shortage of ways to promote this. I've got people that I know in the WordPress community that will help get the word out that Bud's got this new podcast, that kind of thing. I think that would, so I have a lot of things going in my favor to start with, but what I'm going to do though, if I do this, is do like 2 or 3 just practice interviews, just for me to get some practice before I really release anything.
Good idea.
Yeah, just to see where my strengths and weaknesses are before I do this. And one thing I'm going to do is let people talk and try to keep my questions very short and let them have the runway they need to answer it.
Good idea.
Yeah.
Let's jump back to content creation for a minute as we wrap up.
Yeah, sure.
So what's the number one tip you would give a small business that you're doing content for that they should be doing now or they're not doing?
So you're talking about a WordPress, let's say a plugin developer?
Oh, that's fine.
Okay, let's start with that one. Okay, one of the small plugin developers. Okay, let me just pick on that one for a second. I see a lot of really bad videos. Okay, what's a bad video? I think there's 2 things that make a bad video. First of all, audio is the most important thing. Everybody knows that, right?
Yep.
You can screw up the visuals, but you cannot screw up the audio. Okay, do not. And here's how 2 ways I think they screw it up. One is they don't provide narration. Okay, now that drives me nuts. And if I see that on YouTube, that's an automatic thumbs down. Now, why is that? Narration? First of all, I'm visually impaired, so I don't get all the visual that other people get. So I have to hear it to understand what you're doing. And that's true, not just for me, but for everybody. What happens if you're doing something that uses a keystroke, right? How am I going to know it's a keystroke if there's no narration? But if you say use Command V, then I'll know, hey, use Command V. Okay, so no narration is just an absolute no-no. It's just not accessible. It doesn't work. It's just horrible. Number 2, a video, I hate to say it this way, but I'll say it this way, a video with a strong accent that makes it hard to understand is not good. All right. Now, I have a strong accent, I guess, from the Midwest of the United States, but I'm talking about sort of, I don't want to pick on countries, languages, or anything like that, but if it's an accent that most people aren't going to understand, and it's hard for me to define that, but I think there's certain accents that are really hard to understand, then that's a problem too.
And the other thing I would add while we're talking about accents is many people on these videos, especially when teaching, they speak way too fast. Slow it down.
Yeah, I agree. Right. Because I don't know, when I talk to people, I can talk very quickly, but when I'm doing my videos, I tend to talk slower because I have to demonstrate things. And if I just zip, it's just like, what is that? So I do go slower. Well, that's the way it goes. So there's lots of things that a small plugin developer who's doing, let's say, one of these explainer videos, that maybe they put it up on .org, and it doesn't have any audio in it or anything. It's just, please don't.
I also think, and I've said this before on this podcast and on socials, and even in my newsletter, that good creative people aren't necessarily good marketers. And I mean that wholeheartedly. So the problem with some of these plugin developers, or theme developers, or WordPress developers, they're amazing creatives,
right?
But they don't know how to market their business, and that's a problem.
Oh, absolutely. There's so many. I mean, people, some people are really good at it, and some people aren't. And generally, anybody that is either a freelancer or does their own thing, like me, has a small business, we can be so close to the trees that we really just can't figure out the marketing part of it. I've had that problem. That's, everybody's had that problem where you just, you think that you have this great idea that everybody wants, and maybe that's true, but you're just hitting the wrong audience. You're hitting them in the wrong way, whatever. So it's always good to, I guess, get other people's opinions, which is what I'm really doing right now with this podcast idea. Because it has a couple of names right now, but it's not, and like I said before, I haven't made a decision whether I'm doing this or not, so I'd like to do it, but we'll see. One thing you talked about for my benefit too, as far as marketing, I'll meet new people, and I might meet somebody that says, "Oh, I didn't know you did content for businesses. We'd like to hire you to do, would you write, so that's a reason to do it. Yeah. But number one, I want to really just sort of satisfy myself first. Like I said, it's the Steve Jobs approach, because he just created stuff. It's because he said, I want an iPhone. So that's the reason why I created it, and I didn't have to, focus group this thing. I just knew this is what I wanted. Well, it turned out everybody else wanted it too. Yeah, they didn't even know that they needed it. Okay.
Often the best stuff you create for yourself is sellable and marketable, and people don't.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah.
Thanks for your time today. If somebody wants to reach out, how is the best way?
Best way is bud@joyofwp.com. I have a website, joyofwp.com, but that's bud@joyofwp.com. That's the best way.
Thanks so much, my friend, and have a great day. And while you're at it, root for the Jets and the Giants, because they have lots of issues.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you, Bud. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
This show is brought to you by StunningDigitalMarketing.com, your Toronto leader in digital marketing services. Not only do we protect your WordPress website, we can help you with your site, provide social media management for your business, or even do one-on-one consulting. To find out more, go to StunningDigitalMarketing.com. A very special thank you to Bud for joining me on this edition of the SDM Show. Hey everybody, Rob here again. Thanks for listening to the SDM Show. It's such a pleasure to have you every week. If you want more on our agency website, go to StunningDigitalMarketing.com. We are your WordPress security experts. We'd be glad to help you out. If you want to learn more about me, Rob Cairns, go to meetrobcairns.online. From there, you can find links to everything I do on the web, as well as book time with me. So feel free. If you want to make comments about this podcast or know a guest possibly suitable for the podcast, please email us at podcast@stunningdigitalmarketing.com. Or conversely, you can go to X, formerly known as Twitter, and tweet at me at Rob Cairns. This podcast is dedicated to my late father, Bruce Cairns. Dad, I miss you very much, and I love you. Please join us next week for another interesting podcast, and have a great week, everybody. Bye for now.